Podcast. How are you, Dr. Tom?
I'm good. How are you?
Oh, fantastic. So great to have you on. Just for the listeners' sake, where are you joining us from?
I live in upstate New York in the U.S.
Fantastic. Fantastic. So it's not in the evening for you, morning for me, and really look forward to this insightful conversation. I think when I was looking you up, you've written at least 5 books.
I
Yeah.
think it's up to 7 now, including booklets.
Okay, fantastic. Well, I look forward to getting into some of these topics with you. I was really intrigued in terms of some of the topics that you've written on and your background. So, can you please bring the listeners up to speed as to how you've arrived at what you're doing today?
So I had a fairly normal upbringing. I was sort of meant to be a doctor, but I didn't really like it. So I mostly played sports and tried to figure out what else to do. I went to university at Duke. Didn't really like that, so I graduated in 3 years. Then I joined the Peace Corps and taught gardening. And I discovered when I was there that there was a different way to do medicine than I was thought. And that sort of opened a kind of floodgate and found out I was very interested in the subject. So then I went to medical school. And the whole time I knew that I didn't want to do conventional medicine, although I went to medical school and worked as an ER doctor for a while, mostly to make money. And I started looking into what is true and what isn't true in medicine and biology and other things. And I somehow stumbled onto the big revelation in my life, which is you don't have to know what isn't true, what is true to know what isn't true. And that helped me more than anything else, because then I could start looking into and writing books that the heart doesn't pump the blood and blocked arteries don't cause heart attacks and viruses don't exist and bacteria don't cause illness and DNA has nothing to do with heredity and DNA doesn't code for proteins. And I could go on. Cancer has nothing to do with DNA. So I wrote books about these subjects, attempting to come to tell people how I arrived at these conclusions, because I don't expect anybody to believe me, and I wouldn't want them to believe me. So I lay out the case, and sometimes I will offer, what is the heart doing? But it has nothing to do, it doesn't matter whether I'm right or wrong about that to know whether the heart is actually a pressure propulsion device. So that's the key, as I would say.
So, in this discuss, this looking for the truth, this seeking the truth, and obviously it's driven by your curiosity. What was the biggest revelation to you in this journey? Like, what was the real light bulb moment for you?
Uh, I don't know if there was one. That recently, it's uh, the the light bulb moment, or the way I would frame it now, is people used to think that the world was, in a sense, we humans are descended from Adam, Adam, meaning the world is a creation of a creator, and that there's this creator is some sort of non-physical entity that uses non-physical forces like electromagnetism interacting with earth, air, water, and fire to create everything. So that's how people used to see the world, and that things have a purpose and a direction, and etc. And then in 1850s, late 1800s, it did start then, but the people decided that we are created from atoms, but now not ADAM, ATOM. Now that was, I think, in retrospect, kind of mockery. Uh, and so now the world is there used to be nothing, and then a car backfired, and then everything came into existence all at once. And these were little billiard balls. Now we think they're probability functions, but we used to think they were, and they collide randomly. And a bunch of them collide, and then you get a molecule. And then they collide, and then you get a protein, and then they collide, and you get DNA, and then they collide more, and then you get a frog, and then they collide more, and you get a gorilla, and then they collide more, and then you get Klaus Schwab. But if you get Klaus Schwab, you have to get Mrs. Klaus Schwab. Otherwise, the whole thing is all for naught, right? So it's sort of like you go to a junkyard and a tornado goes through, and then you get a 747. That's essentially the sense that makes. Now, there's no evidence that any of that actually happened. In fact, you can't get one species to become another one. If you stress it, it either dies or it reverts back to the original species. So it's all basically a disproven theory. But that's the basis of molecules and the fact that we're made of hormones and vitamins and chemicals, and that we're basically a biochemical project with mechanics and all that, as far as I can see, is wrong. It's a disproven theory, but all of physics, all of medicine, all of biology, that's the fundamental. It's all random. It's all nonsense. It's just collisions of random billiard balls. Somehow you make a liver.
So in terms of, I guess taking all these adventures you've been on in terms of research and trying to make sense of everything and drawing upon logic and all this, and in terms of health, what's your perspective on health?
It's good to have good health. And if you don't, you're going to spend your life trying to find what went wrong and what to do about it, because nothing else matters if you're sick all the time. Now, the other big revelation, which really sets me apart, I think, from conventional medicine for sure, but also 99% of alternative medicine or holistic medicine, is that pretty much, I would say, every symptom we have is the body's attempt to heal. And it's not a disease. There are no diseases. There are no viruses. There's no hormones. There's no DNA. It's all make-believe atomism. But so what do I mean by that? So you get a splinter in your finger, you don't take it out. Next thing that happens, you get pus, right? And you go to a doctor like me, trained in conventional medicine, and he thinks you have an infection. So he gives you an antibiotic to stop the pus. And of course, that means the splinter will stay in your finger. And then it will happen again and again, because the reality is the splinter is the body's strategy for getting out the pus, getting out the splinter. That's obvious and easy to see. But then you breathe in, particulate matter, chemtrails, all the stuff they spray in the air, etc. And then you get debris in your lungs. So what do? Same with like the splinter. You make mucus and warmth and fever and a cough to get it out of your lungs. Now you go to the doctor and he thinks you have bronchitis. And he gives you medicine to stop you from making mucus and stop you from coughing. And then you do that if you're a smoker twice a year for 20 years. Now you have a bag of debris in your lungs for two reasons. One, you put debris in your lungs. And two, somebody stopped you from getting it out. And now you've got a bag of debris in your lungs, and we call that lung cancer. And we say you must have a genetic disease. Because if there's one thing you learn in medical school, one rule, you can be a drug addict, an alcoholic, a pedophile. You can be stupid. You can be anything, but you cannot put the responsibility for illness on the patient. You learn the patient has no agency in their health. It's just bad luck, genes, germs. You had a bacteria land in your throat. That's what happened to you. And you had a mutation in your gene, even though that's actually been disproven, that that's how it works. I wrote a book on that, A Cancer and the New Biology of Water. And that's why you got sick. It has nothing to do with that you eat crappy food, you drink crappy water, you have bad relations, your emotional toxicity, you take vaccines, which are full of poison, you take pharmaceutical drugs, and you let people suppress your body's healing attempts. Doesn't have anything to do with that. It's just bad luck. That's medicine.
And so obviously the listeners have been on their health journey and they've experienced symptoms of, from all sorts of physical ailments or so in terms of going forward, like for the listeners' point of sake, is when they get a symptom, what do you suggest? How do they move forward?
They ask themselves, or somebody who knows how to think properly, of which is usually not a medical doctor. Why is this the best thing for my body to do right now? If I got a splinter in my finger and I have redness and pus, why is that the best thing? The answer is obvious: to get the splinter out. And so all of healing is trying to help the body do what it's already doing. If you have a cough because you breathed in debris, you use mucolytic substances like herbs to help your body get rid of the debris. If you have cancer and that means you have debris, your body has packaged up debris, then you stop putting the garbage. I mean, this isn't like rocket science. You stop putting garbage in and you help take the garbage out. Just like you would if somebody put a whole bunch of garbage in your house. You would say, stop putting the garbage in my house and I'm going to take it out to the curb. I don't know if they do that in Australia, but here we take it out to the curb or you take it to the dump and they get rid of the garbage. So that's how you do it. Now, if you don't want to think like that, you will be forced to stop your body from healing, and then you'll be sick all the time. Even with like, quote, Alzheimer's, why does that happen? So I used to ask people, if they stuck me or they stuck you in a place, a nursing home, right, with no friends, no family, horrible food, shooting you up with flu shots and COVID shots, and you had nothing to do, nothing to read, nothing to look at, what would you do? I'd make up a world, right? And I'd live in that world and everybody would think I'm crazy, but it's better than that place there. And I don't care if people think I'm crazy because they already put me in this place. And that's what we call Alzheimer's. Now, if you don't want to have to make up an imaginary world and not remember your wife's name, you might want to have a different life. And that's how I used to treat patients. I would ask that question. We started a new biology clinic, an online clinic, and this is how our doctors think. And I tell you, once you start helping people like this, you'll never go back.
So I'd like to walk down that path with you as to how you help your clients, particularly given that, you mentioned, we're seeking good health, which I from your point of view, I think it's more optimizing your health and constantly improving it with, I guess, the more knowledge and more awareness that you have around your health, as opposed to just being, having the absence of disease. So let's look at, a typical client that comes into your clinic and how you support that client through their journey.
So the hallmark of the New Biology way of thinking in New Biology Clinic is there are no diseases, there's only individual stories. And that every symptom is your body's attempt to heal. So you can contrast, let's say 35-year-old woman comes in, both knees are swollen, feels bad, the knees are hot, red, painful, and she went to a rheumatologist and they did a blood test and they say, you have positive rheumatoid factor, that's an antibody. That means you have rheumatoid arthritis. Okay? Now let's unpack that scenario a little bit. Rheumatoid arthritis is an autoimmune disease, they say, which means, according to the medical definitions, the antibodies in your blood are attacking your body. That's what they say.
Yeah.
So here's the way I thought of this. Number one, has anybody ever isolated an antibody directly from any person, sick or otherwise? Answer, no. Now, I tell people all the time, if you don't believe me, which I don't think you should, but I don't want to know what your rheumatologist thinks, or I don't want to hear that everybody thinks that. I want to see the paper where they took somebody's blood and purified out an antibody from that blood, because I happen to know it doesn't exist. Now, the next thing you would expect that they would take antibodies and give those to healthy animals or healthy people and show that that antibodies cause disease, right? If you said hammers knock in nails, I would expect you to take a hammer and hit the nail and show me that the nail goes in, not hit the nail with the toolbox and without knowing whether there's a hammer in there or not. Like that would make me think you're sort of dumb or don't understand science. So now I also happen to know there is not a single paper in the scientific literature that any antibody has caused any animal or human any disease. That's a fact. Now, I know that most doctors and people listening don't like facts, so they will say, oh, well, everybody believes it or whatever, but then show me the paper. And then I'll say I'm wrong, but I know there isn't one. So there is no such thing as an autoimmune disease. So what happened to this woman? Well, first of all, now it could be a whole lot of different things, but let's take one scenario. The woman decided to eat a vegan diet, and so she's collagen deficient. And she also decided to take calcium supplements and vitamin D, synthetic vitamin D, because that's good for your joints. Now, the repercussion of that, if you take inorganic calcium and synthetic vitamin D, is you will have calcium deposits. And if you don't eat collagen like bone broth, you'll have weak joints. And so you deposit this calcium deposits in your joints. And that's a problem because you have little spiky things in your knee, right? So what does your body do? It does the only thing it can do, which is try to dissolve the deposits. So it uses heat and inflammation and redness to try to dissolve these deposits. Once it does that, then the knee is back to normal. So if you don't want to have big, swollen, painful knees, it's sort of obvious. A, eat collagen. B, don't take calcium. Don't take synthetic vitamin D. And you might even want to like sting yourself with a bee, which will accentuate the inflammation and get it to dissolve quicker. And that's how I treated people with so-called rheumatoid arthritis. And they would get, I don't like the word, but cured, meaning they didn't have that disease anymore. Now, anybody who believes in the other way, go and sit in a rheumatologist's office, go ask a rheumatologist, How many people have you cured of rheumatoid arthritis in your career? You know what the answer is?
0.
0. They can stop the redness, in which case it'll get worse than ever. They can stop the pain, right? You can give somebody morphine or ibuprofen and it stops the pain. And those have been shown to accelerate the course of the disease because the symptoms are the healing. And if you don't get that, and most alternative doctors, instead of giving ibuprofen or Enbrel, they give turmeric. But they think exactly the same. And I mean, turmeric is fine, it dissolves deposits, so they don't even know what they're doing. And the bottom line is, at the end of the day, we live in a scientifically illiterate culture. And the main illiterates are the scientists and the doctors. And that's a problem because they do all kinds of stupid decisions.
There's so many paths we can go on here. And so I'm at the fork of a road, but the path I'm going to go down next is, a statistic I saw that the number 1 prescribed drug in the world is statins. And you mentioned that, blocked arteries don't cause heart attacks. And I think you said something else along those lines. And you've written a book around the human heart, cosmic heart. Now, I'm really keen to explore this thing around, cholesterol and statin prescription and heart disease. I myself have had a very, not very, but, have had a progressive path of looking after my health. So I've constantly been studying health, looking after and investing in my health. And then I had to get a medical done and the doctor found high cholesterol. He then got a calcium score done. He found, really high calcium and 30% blocked artery. And I'm asymptomatic. Obviously, I've got no symptoms of even having any problem with my heart. And so I'm really keen to go down this path with you as to how you see the heart and how you help your clients with heart disease.
All right, so let's do this together and see if, because I don't want to put words in your mouth, and see if you agree. We'll take it one step at a time. So the process with me is always the same. Find the claim of the conventional medicine and see if it's true. That's what we're doing here. I don't have to know what is true. I'm looking for, so the claim, and I was an ER doctor. I saw thousands of people with heart symptoms or heart attacks. And then I wrote a book and, 20% of my practice was people with heart issues. So I'm pretty familiar with. So what's the claim? The claim is we have a heart. It has 3 major coronary arteries. All the blood to the heart goes through those 3 major arteries. They can get blocked with they say plaque, other people say inflammation, but they get blocked with something. The blood can't get through. Then downstream, after the blockage, there's not enough oxygen, there's not enough food, and it can't get rid of waste products, and that causes pain called angina. And then if it gets bad enough, restricted blood flow, then that's caused a heart attack. You agree with that?
Agree.
And then they evaluate it by cholesterol, because that's maybe the stuff that's depositing in the arteries. They look at how much calcium is deposited, and then they do stents to unblock it, or bypasses to unblock it, or give you statin drugs to lower the cholesterol. Okay?
Correct. Yep.
Okay, so we're clear on the claim.
Yep.
Now, the next question. Is the blood everywhere in your body the same?
In terms
coronary
of
artery, splenic artery, hepatic artery.
What, the blood composition, or?
Yeah, the composition of the blood the same.
No, it's going to vary depending on what the body needs at that part of the body.
That's not true. There's no theory that says the splenic artery blood is different than the coronary artery blood. It's the same blood. goes round and round. In other words, if you have 100 cholesterol in your arm, you'll have 100 in your leg.
Right. Okay.
Right?
Yep.
Same blood.
Yep.
There's not a special blood. This goes to the spleen. This goes to the liver. No.
Yeah.
What about the artery? Is the splenic artery anatomically, histologically the same as the hepatic artery, coronary artery, carotid artery, etc.?
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, we agree. Now, if that's the case and something is precipitating because it's too much in the blood, you would get the precipitates everywhere in the body. Right?
Yes.
If that's the problem, you got too much cholesterol. So lower the cholesterol is going to lower it in your spleen, your liver, your everywhere. It doesn't know just to lower the cholesterol in your coronary artery.
Yes, correct.
Which means that you must have plaque in your splenic artery, hepatic artery, coronary artery, etc. And in fact, you do. How many people do you know have had heart attacks? Lots.
Well, yes.
Dick Cheney, Bill Clinton.
Yeah.
How many people you know had spleen attacks?
Oh, I've heard of none. I can't say none.
I mean, an ischemic attack. Blood flow doesn't get
okay.
People have ruptured spleens.
Yes.
But that's not a spleen attack. They have gallbladder attacks, but that's from a stone.
Yes, correct.
Not from blood flow.
Yes, correct.
In fact, no other organ in the body has attacks, ischemic attacks, except the brain and the heart. They call those strokes.
Yes. Yeah.
Why is that? I thought that was weird. Like, why not? So I started wondering, maybe there's something different about the heart than the spleen. So the next thing is, and I probably heard this 100 times from patients. A normal guy about your age, walk up a mountain, had a little bit of chest pain, felt a little bit out of breath, told the wife. Wife says you go to a cardiologist, goes to the cardiologist. He does, you got to do a test. He does a scan, etc. You got a 95% blockage of your right coronary artery. Then they wag their finger and say, if you block any more, you're going to have a heart attack. Right? I heard that 100 times. So I asked myself, so if you have 5% blood flow to a major part of your heart, how did you walk up that hill?
True.
And you mean if you block from 5% to 3%, you're going to die?
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So then I did the thing that you would think every single doctor who has anything to do with the heart would do. Okay, you say that all the heart attacks are caused by blocked arteries. Somebody must have done autopsy studies on people who died of heart attacks and see how many of them had a blocked artery. Right?
Yeah.
This isn't like, so I did that. And I read every single study. And the biggest one, 40, 50 years, a guy named Giorgio Baroldi, who was a pathologist in Italy, studied thousands of people who died of heart attacks. It's the worst of the worst. And he said 41% of them have a blocked artery. And of those, half of the blockages for sure came after the heart attack, not before. And he doesn't know whether the ones that had a blocked artery before had anything to do with the heart attack. In other words, the scientific literature is very clear. Approximately 80% of heart attacks, the person has no blocked artery to account for that phenomenon. Now, I think the only difference with me is I read something like that and think about those first two things, and I therefore come to the conclusion that this is bullshit. This is bullshit. I don't know what the problem is, but they don't even have a blocked artery. I mean, and not only that, but they used to say, oh, if you have a blocked artery, then you have fewer heart attacks because then you make more collateral circulation and that bypasses it. And the more blockages you have, the more robust your microcirculation is, so you're fine. And the early cardiologists, we're talking 40s and 50s, they did not believe this coronary artery theory. And they had medicines like Statins, which we carry in our clinic, which actually prevented people from having heart attacks. It's been shown for 60, 70 years, but it doesn't have anything to do with blocked arteries. So they stopped using it, not because it didn't work, but because the theory was it's a blocked artery, it doesn't have anything to do with that, therefore it can't work. Yeah, but it does work. Well, but it can't work, so we don't use it. That's how crazy the whole thing is. Now, so I'm clear that unless somebody shows me something different, it has nothing to do with cholesterol, has nothing to do with calcium scores, has nothing to do with blockages. That whole thing has been disproven. But what does happen is the heart and the brain are the most metabolically active organs. And so any organ that runs out of or is metabolically compromised, now that could be from poisoning, nutritional deficiencies, emotional problems, whatever, ends up not having enough energy. And just like in your leg, if your leg doesn't have enough energy, it starts using, it does what's called a glycolytic shift, and it makes lactic acid. Lactic acid causes cramps in your leg, and then you stop running because your leg hurts, and then it flushes it out. Same thing happens in your heart. You get problems in your heart because of the metabolism is weak, and that's usually because of emotional reasons or electromagnetic field. That's what the heart is, an electrical conductor. And you expose yourself to electromagnetic fields, and that sort of poisons your heart. It could be a lot of other things, but that's typical. And then you do this glycolytic shift, build up lactic acid. But the difference between your heart and your spleen or your leg, spleen stops, leg stops, heart keeps going, builds up more lactic acid. That causes a local tissue acidosis, which we know destroys the tissue, and that's called a heart attack. And so there's a medicine which flushes out the lactic acid. It's called Statins. And as far as we know, people who take it don't have heart attacks. And that's the problem with not knowing how to think is you keep, you're not allowed to say stents or bypasses prevent heart attacks, help you live longer. And in 2018, the Lancet did a study on, they took people with chest pain, and half of them they put a stent in, the other half they told them they put a stent in, but they didn't. They just pulled the catheter out. 8 weeks later, same amount of chest pain, proving they don't even help with chest pain. And New York Times runs a front page article, stents proven useless. But 10 years later, or 7 years later, they still do the same number of stents. $50 billion a year industry in the United States.
Wow. So from a heart and brain health point of view, we need to look after the energy systems, the mitochondria. We need to, I guess, minimize our exposure to non-native EMFs. What else do you suggest we do in order to maintain good heart and brain health?
I mean, at the end of the day, I came up with 4 reasons we get sick. So if you don't want to get sick, like have a heart attack, don't do any of these things. So number 1, injuries, like you fall off a horse, break your leg. And so don't fall off horses or get in car accidents and things like that. Number two, you're starving, which means either for nutrients like food or clean water or security or emotional stability or shelter or a supportive environment, or there's a whole lot of things we're starving for. Purpose in life, exposure to the sun. Some people think the sun gives you cancer, which is nonsense. And some people have never grounded to the earth, and that will make you sick because you're starving for the energy from the earth. So that's number two. Number three is you're poisoned. Now, I discovered in my years of 37 years of practice, the worst poisons are from medicine. So vaccines are number one. If you take vaccines, you're going to get sick. They're poison. There's no reason for them. They're poison. They're putting toxic metals and other kinds of cell culture debris in your body, and you will get sick. The second biggest is pharmaceutical drugs. They're all meant to make you sick, and they're very good at that. But there's all kinds of other things. You know, people eat glyphosate and bad food, and, you know, there's a lot of toxicity out there. So you do your, you know, and even light, you know, wrong light, wrong sound, wrong, you know, wavelengths, all kinds of things. So you do your best to avoid that. And the fourth and biggest category is you're delusional, which means you believe that heart attacks are caused by blocked arteries and viruses make you sick, and there's such a thing as an immune system, and ATP makes energy or is energy. You believe all these things. You're an atomist. You believe in the billiard ball theory of life. It's all an accident. You've got no reason to be here. It's all just nonsense. And if you believe that, something bad is going to happen to you.
And so what is your understanding if obviously, you know, you say, like, you've discovered that you can't find any truth behind these claims. So how do you believe life originated?
I don't know. God created Adam. I don't know how he did it or how that worked, but that's the only possible explanation there is. And there was some sort of condensation out of the ether into matter. How that, well, I do know one thing, is the water was the media, is the vehicle that this electromagnetic energy gets downloaded into matter. I know that, but how that works, I got no clue. I'd love to know, actually, you know, but I don't know.
And you're constantly searching for that answer, right? It keeps you curious. It keeps you on purpose. And
yeah, I'd love to know. If anybody knows, let me know, and I'll take a look. I mean, people have ideas, but most of the people are ATOM atomists. And I don't believe that there was a car that backfired and there used to be nothing and then everything came into existence. And they don't know how it happened either, except the car backfired. And I want to know who made the car.
And yeah, okay. So there's some form of creator as to, yeah, like it's like,
I mean, if there's a bang, somebody had to like bang something,
yeah,
or make
correct.
a bang.
Yes.
So what was that? I mean, I don't know. And they don't know either. But they just ignore it. Because anyways, then the bang happened. And then out of that came atoms. And then we got Uncle Joe. If you believe that, you'll believe anything.
Well, I've been really intrigued with a lot of what you raised today, and I'm really keen to do a part two, probably a part three, part four. So I'm going to honor your time and respect that, and make sure that we wrap things up. Before we wrap things up, can you please let the listeners know how they can best connect with you?
So we have a drtomcowan.com website. And we also, like I say, have a clinic called the New Biology Clinic, where all the practitioners are thinking along these lines and trying to sort it out. Why do people get sick? What happened? And, it's an online thing, so anybody in the world can have access to it. And that's really the contribution to medicine in the future, because the way it's practiced now, it's kind of a joke. It's not funny, but it's a joke.
Well, I'm glad we've got people like you in the world that are always asking why, because if it wasn't for you, we wouldn't expand human consciousness. We wouldn't grow and evolve like we are today. So, thank you for your curiosity, your questioning everything. Continue to do that. And I really look forward to having you on again to enlighten the listeners on so many topics and so many roads we could go down, but we could have a 4-hour podcast. So really appreciate your time, Dr. Tom Cowan.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.